Coming up on Talking Points, the Israel-Hamas war continues. What the United Nations and President Biden are urging Israel not to do.
And Republicans have nominated their next speaker designate when the vote will take place in D.C.
Plus, troubles continue on Capitol Hill for two lawmakers. Will they step down? This and more. Talking Points starts right now. The Israel-Hamas war is now in its 9th day. Welcome into this edition of Talking Points. I'm Jake Morel.
And I'm Chilekasi Adele. We have got a packed show tonight, but let's first bring in our panel to discuss the new developments in the war between Israel and Hamas. Olivia Maniscalco, Erica Love join us now at the desk. Erica, let's start out with you. Again, we've talked about it over the past couple of weeks on our news programs, but the numbers, the sheer numbers, the casualties, bring us up to date where we are on that right now.
Well, like you said, we've been talking about all of these numbers that have been being put out by Israel, by different organizations along the Gaza Strip. Let's take a few look at these few numbers in some of these places. We're looking at 1,400 Israelis as of right now, and almost double that in Gaza. That's 2,800. Overall, these are people that have died. This is not just injuries. Right now, we don't even know how many people are injured. There's 500 to 600 Americans that are currently in the Gaza Strip that are unaccounted for and are trying to get out. And there are 30 dead Americans. So not that makes a difference between the casualties, but that is why you see this big effort by the Biden administration to act quickly and to figure out what the issue is. We really don't even know right now what aid looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Right now there is a humanitarian crisis on the Gaza Strip. There are thousands trapped in hospitals. A lot of them went there thinking that airstrikes would probably not happen at a hospital, but airstrikes are happening nearby. Right now, all eyes are on Egypt. The Rafah crossing is that in Egypt and Israel are the countries that border the Gaza Strip, and all eyes are on Egypt to see if they are going to be able to open that crossing. Currently, a bunch of aid is stuck at the border, but they have said that airstrikes on both sides have stopped that from being able to be sent back. But really, hospitals are running out of time. We've been hearing recently in the past couple of hours that water, generator, gas fuels are running out. It's a huge humanitarian crisis that is likely only going to get worse.
Yeah, Olivia, you talk about the humanitarian crisis. I want to talk a little bit about just the size of Gaza. We talked about some of those numbers, just about 25 miles long and about 7 miles wide. Not a lot of area there. And when you have such a long-lasting conflict within that area, that is bound to have long-lasting effects on not only the area, but the populations as well.
And like you said, it's a small area, but it's affecting the entire world. We're talking about 1 million displaced people. This is Israelis and people who live in Gaza. It's Palestinians. It's so many groups of people that have been displaced. And the UNHCR still does not know where these people will go. You have Lebanon, you have Egypt, you have all these other countries that are trying to find ways to come in. And it's not about the politics, it's about helping the people. And there really seems to be no solution as to where 1 million displaced people will go. In war, there really are no winners. So what happens, like you said, in this short, small area when all of these people are pushed to other countries and they don't really know which way to go further north into Israel? Well, the sirens just went off in northern Israel this morning. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like for all of these displaced people?
Yeah, definitely. One thing I want to do, come back, let's pivot a little bit to the United States. We've seen a lot of protests. We've seen a lot of consternation between, supporters of Israel, supporters of Palestine over the course of the past week. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, protests. There's 100 recorded cities of protests just in protest of the issues surrounding the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. Across history, there's always been this conflict of whose land, whose power, whose authority. And like I said, that's 100 cities just involving people who are standing for the Palestinians. That doesn't even count the 16 million Jews across the world who feel connected to this region, who feel like their family members are put into a place where they have nowhere to go, even though this isn't directly affecting American Jews. You see plenty of American Jews out in protest and doing things that they feel like represents their people, but also in a way that recognizes that this is a difficult issue in the first place.
And we've seen that across this state. You know, New York City has been a hotbed for this protest, one of the largest Jewish populations outside of Israel. And then also in Syracuse, you know, our campus was not alone in this. There was a vigil last Wednesday. There was a pro-Palestine protest on Friday. So we've seen the effects of it in this country as well.
And Jake, you know more about this than the rest of us regarding the Biden administration and how they're trying to figure out a way to balance out both sides of the conflict and then show support to others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting. The Biden administration, one of the first things they had to deal with was trying to figure out the connection between this war and a potential powder keg of the Middle East, and how you mentioned that this is affecting so many people worldwide, but how it really could potentially collapse into something as big as a world war. And you saw the U.S.'s money that they sent to Iran recently. They recently froze that. Now, that was subject to Treasury Department oversight. It was for humanitarian aid, but they're still investigating Iran's involvement within Hamas and within the attack. So just like you said, the Biden administration, before they could even address anything at home in the United States and address funding, they had to immediately talk about how could this potentially collapse into what could legitimately be a world war. But now we see them start to react a little bit more domestically.
Yeah, and we have Hamas has come out and said that the initial attack on Israel last week was just them, but Iran has come out and said that if Israel were to initiate more strikes on the ground of the Gaza Strip, then they would not hesitate to join in. Them, also Hezbollah, a militant group out of Lebanon. I mean, there are so many groups that are willing to fight and to just cause the deaths of even more lives. It's just, we know that it is going to, no matter what, end up being a big catastrophe across both sides. In terms of Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he is currently in Israel. He has been there for this is his second time meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister. He's been talking to him for the past 5 hours, I believe, the last time I checked, about what to do. And as of now, President Biden has said that he is not going to send troops into Israel, but he's not going to send troops in, but because he says it would be, quote, a big mistake. But that, like we were saying before, is all going to depend on the scale of this conflict.
And like Olivia mentioned, it's difficult because she just mentioned two different groups here, Hezbollah and Hamas. These are different militant groups, terrorist groups to some, but these are also groups that have historically provided resources to people in the region. So what do you do when those resources run out from the very people that are also causing the violence, right? So as we move forward with this politically, this region is such a hotbed right now for politics, for religion, for history, archaeology. There's so many overlapping layers of what this will turn out to be. President Biden is always going to be in a tough position. The next president is going to be in a tough position.
And we talk about U.S. politicians, we'll have to see if there's a House Speaker to allocate funds to Israel, and that's something that we will check out later in the show. Thank you, Erica and Olivia, and we'll continue to discuss that conflict later. But next on Talking Points, when you should expect that speaker vote in Congress. Stay with us.
One in three adults has prediabetes. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother, you, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, your plumber,
Breathe right into your foot.
your plumber's masseuse,
Yes.
you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Republicans have nominated Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio to be the next Speaker of the House, but it's not expected to be a smooth ride for Jordan when he hopes to call for a House vote tomorrow.
According to new reporting from Punchbowl News today, there are upwards of 10 Republicans who are in the firm Never Jordan camp. That's a quote. If this stands tomorrow, it could further delay the House from having a speaker. Republicans can only afford to lose 4 votes out of its 221 members.
Right now, Republicans are holding a closed-door meeting on Capitol Hill. They hope to have a resolution tonight before the roll call vote at noon tomorrow.
Now, we should know it's unlikely that House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries will become Speaker because either side needs more than half the vote to get control of the gavel. Let's bring in our panel. They've been monitoring today's developments all day long. Luke Welch, Andrea Rose Oates, welcome. Thank you, guys. Hey, let's talk about this first. We talked about some allies flipping for Steve Scalise going over to Jim Jordan. Others are skeptical.
Yes, well, currently Steve Scalise was the candidate, but he ultimately dropped out after 24 hours once he found out that Republicans were failing to support him. Now, while this came as a shock, it also was very predictable. After publicly announcing that he was dropping out the race, Scalise said, quote, "This country is counting on us to come back together. The House of Representatives needs a speaker, and we need to open the House again. But clearly not everybody is there, and there's still schisms that need to be resolved," end quote. Scalise was supporting issues like Second Amendment rights, national security, veteran affairs, and other social causes. Scalise was hoping to turn his opponent's opinions, but ultimately he couldn't even gain full support from his own party. So it definitely comes as a shock, but now Jim Jordan is the new candidate who is hoping to securely gain the spot, and he only needs 217 votes to do so. But as of now, there has not been a Speaker of the House for 12 consecutive days.
Well, you talk about gaining support from your party. You know, that wing of far-right GOPers was why we're in this situation in the first place. So, Luke, I want to bring you in here. Who does the far-right want? What are they willing to vote on to get a speaker back?
Well, leaders from the far right have said that they are in full support of Jim Jordan, and it's really no surprise Jordan is an avid supporter of the former President Donald Trump. He defended him through January 6th. He has denounced the investigation into the president regarding that situation. But Matt Gaetz is confident that Jordan will receive the necessary votes, which is surprising since how poorly Scalise did previously. But without some major deal from Democrats and cooperating across the aisle, I think it's unlikely that we see a new speaker elected anytime soon. But in terms of what the far right really want in terms of legislation, it's really no secret. Single issue spending bills that won't put the U.S. into further debt. And also they want to put the Freedom Caucus, their name, on the map. But it seems like they've been digging their own grave recently, really, wasting time and limiting the ability of one of the most powerful government organizations, arguably, in the world, and that's the U.S. Congress. And by wasting time, I mean impeachment into President Biden, promoting lackluster spending bills that they know both won't pass the Democratic Party. So it's interesting.
So we've talked about the far-right fringe, right? I think one thing we should focus on as well, the Democrats, you know, a lot of them are kind of just sitting and waiting right now. We talked about the unlikelihood of Hakeem Jeffries becoming the speaker, but will any Democrats come over and save these Republicans out what's going on right now? And the Republicans, what do they do if they want help? What did the Democrats also do if, you know, you got to give and get here?
Well, it's difficult because Democrats want really different things from what the GOP and the far right want. They just want to get past this hurdle of the government shutdown and hit the ground running in terms of passing legislation. They're tired of these games that Matt Gaetz has brought forward with the motion to vacate, and they're willing to put interim Speaker Patrick Mahenry in just so that they can start sending aid to Israel and continuing aid to Ukraine. And this is breaking from Punchbowl, actually. Representative Michael McCall, while he's a Republican from Texas, he said that he avowed his support for Jim Jordan and that Jim Jordan is willing to put in his spending bill aid to Ukraine, aid to Israel, and as well as money for border security. And shifting back to what Democrats want, it's ironic that they want to reform from the requirement of one representative to put forward a motion to vacate, like Matt Gaetz performed a few weeks ago.
Now, Andy, let's bring you back in here, talking about, you know, what's actually happening right now. We have this closed-door meeting on Capitol Hill. Is Jim Jordan going to get this support, and how is he going to do that? And if he does, do you think that he'll be able to show it on the floor tomorrow?
Well, surprisingly, Jim Jordan has actually gained a vast amount of support, specifically from House Armed Defense Services Chairman Mike Rogers and House Appropriations Defense Subcommittee Chairman Ken Calvert, who are both two key defense hawks. But with this additional support that Jordan is gaining, he still has a very long way to go in order to be officially elected Speaker of the House. On the floor, Jim Jordan can only afford to lose to 4 Republican candidates if every member votes, because the Speaker needs a majority of the full House in order to be elected. If Jordan is successful ultimately and secures all the necessary votes to become Speaker, then it would put a chaotic end to the unprecedented 2 weeks that have been happening following Kevin McCarthy resigning. But if he were not able to get the votes that he needs, then there would still be a speaker paralysis. But without a speaker, then the House is not able to do things such as pass necessary legislation, especially amidst all the international crises that are currently underway. And also, with the government shutdown expected to be about 1 month away, a House Speaker is now needed more than ever.
And Luke, one thing I want to kind of bring back here for a little bit is just what Americans are thinking right now. We have this vacation. There's no House Speaker going in Washington right now. We have this war going on between Israel and Hamas. We have an election a little bit over a year away. What do Americans think about everything that is going on right now in Capitol Hill?
Well, I mean, it just seems like a mess. The GOP and the House in themselves, it just seems like no one really knows what they want. And everyone's mind is on the war with Israel and all the people that are suffering there. So I think putting forth a House Speaker is a normal procedure that happens every year. And so this is historic that it's even happening that there is no Speaker. Sorry, excuse me. But I think they just want to see aid to Israel, aid to Ukraine, and they just want to see Congress back in session.
No one knows what they want. Very interesting point there.
Luke and Andrea, thank you for joining us. As the Speaker drama continues on Capitol Hill, some of the members in swing districts seem very frustrated with the developments so far. Republican Mark Molinaro represents New York's 19th House District, which was won by President Biden in 2020. But after flipping the seat from blue to red last year, Molinaro takes issue with his seat being called, quote, a Biden district. Take a look at what he told Spectrum News.
Joe Biden doesn't own the 19th Congressional District. It is not a Biden district. It is a district of very skeptical voters who want to know that the President, the House, and the Senate are going to do something for them. And so they don't give a shit who the Speaker of the House is. They care if we are functioning and delivering for them.
A very animated Mark Molinaro there, huh?
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen this in the House and in those buildings over and over again in the past month when we've had all this speakership drama. You know, there was a video of George Santos the other day yelling as he walked through the halls of Longworth after he was holding a baby. We're seeing a lot of this happen in Congress, and you know, it's hard not to think it's just a byproduct of what's going on. There's no speaker, there's no leader.
Definitely. Well, joining us now to discuss the goals of the so-called New York frontliners is Talking Points analyst Luke Radel. Luke, why are these folks so concerned?
Yeah, an example of the answer to that question lies right here in Onondaga County. In 2020, Joe Biden won this county by 20 points, and yet New York's 22nd Congressional District, which is centered in Onondaga, elected a Republican named Brandon Williams. Take a look at the margin of victory for the 4 Republican freshmen in New York State. Anthony D'Esposito out of Long Island won by less than 4 points. Mike Lawler won by less than 1, which is why you've been seeing him all over CNN lately. Mark Molinaro of the Hudson Valley, and who you just saw, managed a 2.2% victory margin. And Brandon Williams at NY22 narrowly won here in Syracuse by just a single point. These were tough seats to win for Republicans. And keep in mind that the current GOP control of the House is by a margin of just 4 seats, meaning that without these 4 guys on your screen being in Congress, we would likely have a Democrat as the Speaker right now. So when you see folks like Mark Molinaro or Mike Lawler all over the Sunday shows and on CNN, know that they are watching those margins very closely and know that if there's a perception of Republican chaos in the House, they could lose their re-elections in 2024, and they certainly don't want that. Guys?
Luke, you know, you talk about some of them being on those Sunday shows and on CNN and on network news. Some of them have strived to make themselves appear bipartisan and moderate, but will they support an uber-conservative candidate like Jim Jordan for Speaker?
That's been the question of the weekend. Mike Lawler says that he's going to vote for Kevin McCarthy, at least on the first round. Mark Molinaro, just a few hours before we went on tonight, said that he will be supporting Jim Jordan. Brandon Williams and other members have been a little bit more tight-lipped, but I'll level with you guys. I haven't been able to speak directly to these folks in the past couple of weeks, as you might imagine. They've been a little busy lately as they're trying to figure out who to become the next speaker. But as an analyst, I'll tell you, it's possible that they might decide the calculus of having a speaker, Jim Jordan, is better than having no speaker at all. You might imagine, though, that Democratic groups will be eager to hit those members pretty hard no matter what they do in toss-up seats. But if they do support Jordan, you'll probably hear a lot about Jim Jordan's recent past as an election denier. He voted to overturn the Pennsylvania presidential results in 2020. And here's what the vice chair of the January 6th committee had to say about him. Liz Cheney says that if Republicans make him speaker, quote, they will be abandoning the Constitution, they'll lose the House majority, and they'll deserve to. Guys?
Luke, that is certainly a fear for some. Thank you so much. More charges are on the way for 2 members of Congress. What those charges are and the likelihood of a resignation next.
Welcome to my house. Lately, not my happy place. Everybody's pretty tired of each other. The parents were not themselves. My little brothers were morphing into small creatures. The walls were closing in. Clearly, a case of too much family, too close, 24/7. And there's a lot of that going around right now. If this sounds like your house, try going someplace new. YourLifeYourVoice.org. You'll find lots of ideas to help you handle the family stresses of being confined to close quarters. YourLifeYourVoice.org. It might not get you out of the house, but it could help you find a little more breathing room.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Former President Donald Trump has been hit with a partial gag order in the January 6 case. Federal Judge Tanya Chutkan imposed the order, preventing Trump from further attacking any potential witnesses. This order also protects prosecutors, special counsel Jack Smith, court staff, and their families from being mentioned by Trump in a public forum. Chutkan declined to limit Trump from speaking out against her personally or the District of Columbia. Chutkan addressed the reasoning, saying she believes his words hamper the administration of justice. Trump is still set to be tried next March for his alleged involvement in the January 6th insurrection.
And legal troubles continue for Senator Bob Menendez and Congressman George Santos. Menendez is accused of accepting bribes from a foreign government and acting as a foreign agent. The New Jersey senator was charged last month for allegedly providing sensitive government information to the government of Egypt and aiding them. And New York Congressman George Santos was slapped with 10 more charges on Thursdays. Some of those accusations include stealing donors' identities and running up charges on fraudulent credit cards. In new analysis from the Washington Post last week, Santos and Menendez remaining in office is a bargaining chip to strike a plea deal with prosecutors. They could potentially say that they're willing to resign from office if they get a plea deal that benefits them. Now let's bring in Peter Barry, who's been monitoring these stories for us. Peter, thanks for joining us tonight. It's safe to say calls for Santos's and Menendez's resignations are growing among their legal troubles. Both men have said they will not step down. How likely is there to be a vote for them to be expelled from office?
So it's going to be extremely unlikely that a motion to vacate their seat is going to come to fruition because both of them are standing their ground for not resigning. The 3 reasons why they are not going to have the motion to vacate is they need 2/3 of the Senate and the House to actually expel them from the House and Senate. And they also have a narrow majority in the House and the Senate, so they're not going to get rid of a Republican or a Democrat to give the other party an edge. And their term's going to be over in 2024, so might as well let the constituency do the heavy lifting. As we saw in Luke's segment, we saw Brandon Williams call on Santos to resign. And if Santos is still in, it's going to be easy pickings for the Democratic Party to say, if this downstate Republican is like George Santos, then this upstate Republican is going to be like George Santos.
Turning away from the politics here for a second, what's next on the docket for both of the actual cases?
So politicians from New Jersey and New York have been calling on Santos and Menendez to resign for months now. We'll see Santos go to federal court on October 27th, which is going to be less than 2 weeks from now, and we'll see Menendez go on trial May 6th of 2024. But it is going to be hard to imagine that Senator Menendez and Congressman George Santos are going to win back their seats with the mounting legal fees. But only time and the evidence against them will show the fate of their seats.
Peter Barry, thank you. Coming up after the break, President Biden addresses the Israel-Hamas conflict, what he urged Israel to do next.
Norm. He lives with anxiety, but with the help of this latest innovation from Be Normal, he can be normal, just like everyone else. With the swipe of a finger, you can project happiness, confidence, machismo. Why settle for being real when you can be normal? The Normal Maker, new from Be Normal. This item doesn't really work because there's no such thing as normal. We're all different. What we like, how our brains work. In fact, 1 in 5 of us live with mental illness. Don't filter who you are. Start by talking to someone you trust. And remember, there is no normal.
Can you foresee U.S. troops in combat in this new Middle East war?
I don't think that's necessary. Israel has one of the finest fighting forces in the country. I guarantee we're going to provide them everything they need.
That was President Biden during a pre-recorded interview with 60 Minutes on CBS last night on whether U.S. troops will be sent back to the Middle East. There are concerns here at home about whether the scenes of horror we've seen in Israel could happen here. Here's what the president had to say about the threat of terrorism on our shores.
Because of what we're seeing in the Middle East, is the threat of terrorism in the United States increased?
Yes, I had a meeting this morning with the Homeland Security people, with the FBI, for the Situation Room for the better part of an hour to discuss how we make sure that we prevent a lone wolf and or any coordinated effort to try to do what was done in synagogues before, do what was done to Jews in the street.
Another concern here at home are the American hostages being held in Gaza. The White House has said there are 15 U.S. citizens who are unaccounted for, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan was pressed on the rescue efforts yesterday morning on CNN.
And frankly, Jake, if my kids were being held hostage in Gaza, and as you know, there are Americans being held hostage in Gaza right now, I'd want you to send in the Navy SEALs.
One important point when it comes to the issue of the Navy SEALs is we do not at this point have pinpoint location information for where the American hostages are.
And that's just something, we keep on going back to. We talk about this war and numbers and casualties, But again, those casualties, that's stuff I think we all resonate with. And the people who are being held hostage and the people who are being kidnapped, it's just all so frustrating, so sad.
Absolutely, Chile, and that's something we'll keep an eye on here in the next few weeks on Talking Points. But that's all the time we have for you tonight. Check us out on social media at CitrusTV News. I'm Jake Morel.
And I'm Chilekasi Adele. Good night.